Hello and welcome to the Inside Elland Road podcast with me, Joe Donoghue, and YEP chief football writer Graham Smith. Only football produces storylines like we've experienced over this bank holiday weekend, doesn't it? It could have been so different, but it wasn't. Friday night at the Plymouth Barbican, people dressed as bananas doing headers into the water, Eddie Gray drinking a pint out of a plastic cup, starting chants being serenaded by others. Saturday lunchtime, promotion already sewn up, but the title within reach, a goal down, a lacklustre first half, equaliser, hope, desperation, and finally, deliverance. And then Sunday, the day of rest, an opportunity to recover, unless you were, of course, a Leeds United player. The feel-good factor was in full flow at the end of season awards. And then Bank Holiday Monday, a city decked out in yellow, white, and blue smoke, hundreds of thousands lining the streets. And Graham, I think we can both agree that best of all, we were asked by a fan for a selfie in City Square, which clearly shows that I am, in fact, taller than you.
The only way that would be true would be if his camera was at a wonky angle somehow, or if you'd surreptitiously taken a step forward just at the right moment. Yeah, what a day that was! I think my throat is still recovering from the acrid intake of smoke, particularly at the moment when, after waiting for 4 hours or whatever it was, the bus arrived. And people who, to be fair to them, they had earlier told me, come back later, we've got 34 flares. Well, they obviously let off each one of those flares at the same time. And the photographers, the assembled photographers from all the agencies and big media organizations were left with a shutter full of smoke instead of gripping images of the parade. Yeah, it was incredible. Absolutely unbelievable, really. Just when you got off the train at Leeds station, it hit you just the magnitude of what was going on. It was like, do you remember when we got to Wembley and it just felt like, this is incredible. The number of Leeds fans here is incredible. Well, it was like that times 10, I think. City Square, 2.5 hours before the parade, City Square was just remarkable. The atmosphere. And outside the art gallery as well, there was only one point where the atmosphere dipped a little, the energy kind of dipped a little bit. And then everyone realised that the bus had reached the top of the hedgerow. And because there was a barrier, there was no one on the roads, they knew that very soon the bus would be there. And then the atmosphere just ramped up again and again and again until the bus arrived. And even if, I heard somebody on the train say, it took me 2 hours to get to Leeds. I waited for 2 hours and it'll be 2 hours home. And I saw the bus for 10 seconds. And they were almost a little bit rueful with it. But my feeling was the 2 hour journey to Leeds, the 2 hour wait and the 2 hours back are equally as part of the memory and the celebration and the day as those 10 seconds when you actually got to see the bus. It's the fact that you were there in the atmosphere and the reason why you were there, along with 150,000 conservative estimate supporters.
I mean, when you think about it, 6 hours pales into insignificance when you've waited potentially 33 years for a parade through the city centre to celebrate something that the team have achieved. I mean, alone 6 hours compared to 5 years, because it could have been and should have been a parade and one to be celebrated last time Leeds won the championship. But yeah, it felt really cathartic, coming together. The city was just in such good spirits. There was just an incredible atmosphere, just totally. And I think as well, what really added to the magic of the day was that you could tell it was felt and it was matched by those on the buses.
Was it ever?
Well, we'll get onto that, won't we? But it felt as though it was just hundreds of thousands of people. There was no disconnect. The Farkas discussed about how one of his big aims was to reunite the fans with the squad and with the club from when he came in, because there was a lot of ill feeling towards members of the squad when Leeds were relegated, as is often the case when teams go down a division. But yeah, this squad, this team will forever be bonded to the city of Leeds because it is such a monumental achievement. And again, I think a massive well done goes to the organisers, Leeds City Council, as well as the club and all the other agencies, because for the most part, I think it went off without a hitch. And I hope as well that all the local businesses have recovered from having hundreds of thousands of people outside their doors. I suppose that is a very good point to thank our sponsors, because the Inside Ellen Road podcast is brought to you by Uyare and Tharavadu, award-winning South Indian restaurants born in the heart of Leeds, rooted in Kerala and proud to carry Leeds United in their hearts. I've actually been to Tharavadu before, not yesterday, couldn't get in the door because due to its location situated next to the train station, I think you would have to have forced your way and elbowed your way through about 100 bodies to get to the door. Graham, what would you be getting if you were going to a South Indian restaurant just to, I don't know, celebrate promotion, celebrate a title right now?
I really could have done with some of their nourishment yesterday, because I made the mistake of not taking any food with me to the balcony at the Arts Gallery, and the city council, who were really kind to staff that and give us access, were quite clear that once you were in, they'd really quite like you to stay in, because they didn't want to have to keep a staff member going to the door and telling fans, no, you can't come in, and all of that. So I was up there without any scran for a very long time, to the point where I thought I might send you for some sort of sandwich and then you could hurl it up to me. Yesterday, if I could have had something, maybe a lamb biryani with some sagaloo and a pashwari naan, maybe. But obviously, the usual no dairy, please caveats would have to apply. Yeah, I do hope if they're sponsoring the podcast that some of that food is going to make its way to us at some point. Otherwise,
Well, I
this
suppose
whole
now that
thing fails.
we've mentioned it, I'm sure they'd be very, very happy to furnish you with all the lamb biryani that you can stomach. I'm also a Peshwari naan sort of guy as well. There's no allergies here, so I can have everything on the menu. But yeah, thank you very much to those guys. Back to let's reverse a little bit. Let's rewind and go back to Friday night or Friday daytime. As Graham and I were obviously on the way to Plymouth ahead of the final day. Again, the title was not sewn up. Yes, Leeds were in pole position, but it given the way that Burnley had played this season, you thought, you know what, if Leeds maybe aren't at it on Saturday lunchtime, they could be pipped there. But that wasn't going to stop Leeds fans enjoying their promotion in the sun on the south coast, was it?
No, absolutely incredible. The Barbican looked unreal, to be honest. I mean, it could have been by the side of Leeds Canal. The number of Yorkshire folk that were there, the trains on the way down, absolutely rammed with Leeds fans, and again, incredible atmosphere. Great that the sun was shining, so they could actually get out amongst it. We were thinking, weren't we, on Saturday, or maybe it was Friday night, about how terrible a trip that could have been. With all due respect to the wonderful northern towns and cities that we go to and some of the other places we go to, but there are some places that would not have lent themselves particularly brilliantly to a weekend getaway for thousands of Leeds fans. And we don't need to name them, one of which we are very pleased to not be returning to because of the lack of quality of its press food. But the fact that it was Plymouth, picturesque, down by the sea, sun shining, it just felt fitting, really, that Leeds would be there on the beach, I mean, yes, they're going for a title, but they were in those previous two games like they were playing on the beach, against Stoke and Bristol City. They're playing with no fear. So it felt like it was just going to be a big celebration, regardless of what happened against Plymouth Argyle. But there was still that edge of, we really want to finish this off. We really want to do this. So yeah, the Friday night was great. We unfortunately were at the mercy of Popey's restaurant booking, which of course was the furthest restaurant from any of the action that he could possibly find. We were instead in some heavily naval influenced posh part of town, men in khaki uniforms with large guns, that kind of thing, admirals floating around. Beautiful marina, of course, but distinct lack of pyro, I felt. And then Saturday was just wild, wasn't it, from start to finish?
Yeah, incredible. Graham, you taxied up to the stadium because a man of a certain age, it's quite a steep hill, isn't it, when you go into the green space that home park is situated in. Me, on the other hand, I thought, you know what, it's a beautiful day. I think I said that much to you. I'm gonna take a stroll up. Yes, I was incredibly sweaty when I got to home park. And did I regret my decision? Yes, I did. Um, but in fact, talking about press food earlier, a great breakfast buffet, wasn't it? Excellent breakfast buffet. Um, and the only little thing that tarnished the food at Plymouth was I went and sat sort of in the media suite. There's a working room, and then there's a sort of the press conference suite at Plymouth. And the working room, by the time I got there, was quite full. I just thought, you know what, I'll just take myself to one side, enjoy my breakfast, and then get ready to work. No sooner had I popped a sausage with beans dripping down the side of it into my mouth, had someone from Plymouth came over, and they said, "Oh, sorry, I've caught you there at a really bad time." Me with a mouthful of food, just saying, "Yeah, you think?" And he asked me very politely and very justifiably whether I'd vacate the room, because that was actually where the Plymouth players like to come in and do their pre-match praying. So, because that's such a lovely request, couldn't possibly say no. Do you mind if I finish this first? I had then had to take myself out, and yeah, went out into the onto the touchline, and I was greeted by you. You were sat there eating your breakfast as well, out of a little polystyrene tub.
There's something that I love so much about the idea of Darko JB trying to do his morning prayers with his teammates, and you sat there in the corner with a cup of beans, just dunking your sausage into cup of beans. Absolutely superb. Yeah, and then Leeds fans were already getting to the stadium by that stage, and there was the little fan zone, and people starting to come in and set up their flags and whatnot. And chatting to some of the Leeds backroom staff and security people and whatnot, they were really, really relaxed. They said it had been quite a quiet night the night before, but they were all saying the same thing. Like, I really hope they finish it off. And a few were kind of couching it as, the main job's been done. But there was no doubt that there was a reason why Joe Rodon and Ampadu and the like hadn't really got on it properly after promotion had been celebrated. Yes, they had celebrated, and there'd been champagne and drinks and whatnot, but they hadn't gone full Ampadu yet, and we weren't aware at that stage what full Ampadu really looked like, because they just wanted to win it, and it was going to be a difficult game. The atmosphere at Plymouth, the 3 times that we've been there in the last 2 seasons, the atmosphere has been absolutely superb. Like, I've been really, really impressed on each occasion with their fans. Yeah, they have a drum, so you dock a point for that, but you add points when your team is down and you're still creating that atmosphere when you're singing League One again. So there's a little bit
Shall
of
I tell you
irony
what I
in the
really
air.
like?
Go on.
I really liked the was it the Plymouth fans when they went a goal up? It was Premier League. You're having a laugh. To
Yeah.
which the Leeds fans, without breaking stride, just immediately responded to an already relegated team with Championship. You're having a laugh. Which, you know what? Again, great creativity, and I genuinely think the Plymouth fans, that's what they were applauding at that point.
Then they launched into Sacked in the Morning, which was also, now we can laugh at that.
Yeah.
At the time, maybe not so, but we'll come on to that. But yeah, atmosphere was just set up perfectly.
Yeah, incredible day. And I mean, the first half, we can probably gloss over the first half. They weren't really at it. They played like a team that were already promoted and maybe had been on the razzle dazzle for a few days beforehand, even though we know they weren't. It was very much a 12:30 early kickoff, wasn't it? Performance, but just this team, they keep coming up with the goods every single time, and they managed it. Gnonto getting on the score sheet, Solomon getting to the byline and cutting it across, because as you mentioned in your verdict, pretty much every time in the first half, Solomon had cut inside onto his right and tried to bend one into the far corner. There was one that was off target. There were I think there was one that was blocked. It was a cross which didn't quite meet its intended target. But then when he went the other way, sort of caught Plymouth a little bit off guard, and gets the ball across. I think Bogle gets a touch, or it just kind of comes through him, and then Gnonto's there on hand to put it in. And I think the celebration epitomised just how much that team wanted the title. There was no fuss. There was no, we're gonna do a little dance in front of the Leeds fans. No, it was get the ball out of the net and let's get up the other end, put the ball on the centre spot, and go again. Obviously, not until the 91st minute did they get that second goal. But I mean, I have to say, if you're listening to this and you were in the away end, or one of the individuals who was in the home end, who then found their way into the away end during the celebrations, that might be the best limbs I think I've ever experienced in a ground, because it just felt as though it was like one of those glitter cannons from last week. It felt as though the roof just came off. The Solomon trying to strip himself down to literally nothing. There's Willie Gnonto on the turf with his head buried. There's a pylon. There is that one guy dressed in black who was in the home end, and as Solomon wheels away to the corner of the Leeds away end, he thinks, now's my moment. With all the stewards looking the other way, runs down the steps of the home end in the adjoining sort of Plymouth section, leaps the barrier, runs across the bit next to the goal a tiny bit, and then into the Leeds section. A Plymouth steward clocks that, but by the time he does acknowledge it, the individual is already in amongst the celebrating fans. It's impossible to identify him then, and he's successfully evaded capture. I mean, where does that rank for you in terms of the limbs that you've experienced in a football stadium?
Yeah, I think it is absolutely right up there. If maybe not, it might even be the best single moment of covering games at this club, because Ayling's volley against Huddersfield was right up there. But Pablo Hernandez at Swansea is right up there, but the only limbs were those of players, and staff. Dallas at Man City is right up there, and this joins those, if not goes in ahead of them, just because of what it meant. The fact that the title was heading to Turf Moor at that stage, it looked like Plymouth were going to do the job and hold Leeds out, and they had huffed and puffed a bit. They created a fair bit, but they just weren't that tidy in the final third, and they'd put the ball over the bar so many times. I had shots blocked, and it just felt like one of those days. And you thought, I actually don't believe this. There are two very Leeds things that could have happened. One was they're missing out on the title on the last day, after absolutely obliterating Stoke and Bristol City and looking like they were on easy street and coasting to it. To lose it on the final day would have felt quite Leeds. The other very Leeds thing was to wait until the 91st minute and do it that way. And it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect the way it happened. And it was so much more memorable, I think, than a 2 or a 3-0 win. And credit to Plymouth, because they actually had chances to score more goals. And it so easily could have been Burnley's day, and you couldn't really take that away from them. 100 points is absolutely insane. Conceding 16 goals, was it? Is absolutely insane. But for me, it felt like justice for attacking football that Leeds did it because of how much more attacking they've been this season. And it felt like football was the real winner. And
look at you. Look at that little smirk on your face. Look, there it is.
Look, Matt Scrafton at the Burnley Express, great colleague of ours. Absolutely nothing against him, but why would I want him to be writing about the title win and not me and you? So for selfish reasons, I was very, very pleased indeed. And it's just amazing to see like that reaction, and then the reaction at full time. We had our phones trained on the away end at full time, and it was pure theatre, wasn't it? From the away end to the staff running onto the pitch to Joe Rodon looking like a man who's lived his life in poverty, who's just been told, you've just won the Euro lottery, son. You've just won 200 million. How do you feel? It was like his entire brain exploded inside his head, and he didn't really know what to do with himself at all. And I don't think many of the players knew what to do with themselves until they all sort of collected some thought and raced towards the away end. And of course, Daniel Farke just sat in the dugout looking bereft. And with all the context and the backdrop to that and that story that we'll come on to, it was just pure Leeds United theatre. Unreal, absolutely unreal.
Yeah, a real blessing to be at a moment like that. I mean, we talk about being at 46 games out of 46 in a season, and how some of them are just a bit of a drag sometimes. Like a Swansea away on a Tuesday night, that can be a real test if it's particularly in November or something. But days like that are incredible for so many reasons. What was, I mean, what was your favourite moment of the post game celebrations? Because obviously all the fans are in there. I think one of my favourite moments was when we sort of went onto the pitch. The players are sort of getting ready to do their celebration in front of the fans. We're in no man's land between the pitch and the fans. And before the players were out there to come and take the trophy and hoist it above their heads, there were a few fans behind us who shouted at us in, let's say, no uncertain terms, to get the something down, so that they could see the presentation. And you turned around without skipping a beat and just went, "Yeah, when they come out, we'll get down." I thought, you know what, fair enough, because there's nothing separating us and the fans here. If they don't like what Graham said there, they could come for him. But no, you fear no man, do you?
Well, it was just that I didn't want them to think that we were just going to stand in their way as they lifted the trophy. You don't get a rerun of that. So if you can't see because of some lummox's lovely bald head in front of you, very shapely bald head, but still a bald head all the same, you don't want that. So I was very, very amenable to the idea of sitting down on the wet grass to record what we needed to record. Did I have a favourite moment? One of my favourite moments was definitely a Plymouth Argyle staff member sidling up to me and saying with a grin, "Joe will be on the daiquiris tonight, won't he?" Because he'd obviously listened to last week's podcast.
Oh, incredible.
I thought, oh my God, they literally get everywhere. They're an invasive species, Leeds United. They have got everywhere where water cannot. And the number of Leeds fans in the home end that were left, once all the Plymouth fans had kind of drifted away, at first you thought, oh, that's nice. Like all those Plymouth fans are staying back to watch the trophy being lifted. No, they were Leeds fans. They were all Leeds fans. Yeah, superb. And it was great to get some of the players' kind of immediate reactions afterwards as well to that. Joel Peru coming over and checking on his way over to be interviewed if Sainz had scored a few goals that day, and being told that no, he had won the Golden Boot. So he was very pleased about that. Solomon, the man of the moment. That goal as well, this season, Leeds haven't been a one-man band because there was spells where Solomon didn't really do it. Difficult start, that 8-game run towards the end of the season with no goals or assists. And it hasn't just been one man at any time. There's been men for moments. Dan James carrying the club on his back a couple of times. Willie Gnonto coming up with some big goals. Jayden Bogle, Junior Firpo, Tanaka's chipped in. Like Rothwell with his big moments. Pascal Stroik with his headers. They've been able to share responsibility, this team, for dragging the team across the line. Joe Rodon, that tackle at Oxford United, it has been a real squad effort. But there was something quite fitting about the fact that Solomon, probably the best player in the division, gets on the ball in the 91st minute and does what he did. And he was absolutely thrilled to bits afterwards. I mean, genuinely emotionally thrilled to bits.
Mm. Yeah, he was. We were stood there with him, and he's just beaming, grinning from ear to ear. And I think as well, sometimes, and I mean, this has been the case at this club as well. Sometimes the buy-in from loan players isn't 100%, and you can understand why, because they know that they're there for a set period of time. They're not contracted. They maybe haven't had the time to develop that emotional connection with the fans yet. Solomon, I feel as though really has. He definitely feels the love that the Leeds fans have shown him, and he's rewarded them with performances on the pitch. I mean, he finished the season with 10 goals and 12 assists, which is the first Leeds player to go to do a double-double in terms of double figures goals, double figures assists since Pablo in the previous promotion season, which I think really contextualizes the impact that he's had. And when you factor in that he hasn't actually been 100% in, throughout the entire season, he's someone who's had to come back from an injury which pretty much robbed him of the entirety of last season. Took a while to get up to speed at Leeds, then had that 8-game spell towards the back end of the season before the run in, where he didn't contribute in terms of goals and assists. It puts it into perspective even more that when the goings got tough, particularly right at the end of the year, he's come up with some really, really big goals and big assists. And I think you're right in what you're saying. While he might not have won the Championship's Player of the Year, I certainly think he's the most talented on any given day. As I've just said, he hasn't really had the consistency because of X, Y, and Z reasons. But yeah, he's certainly the most talented, if not one of the most. And yeah, we'll have to wait and see what comes of the future for him. We chatted to him, and he said I think it was Popey actually during his little bit with Solomon. He was saying, these fans aren't going to let you leave now. You've developed not just a connection, you've written yourself into the folklore of this club with that goal. It'll always be remembered as the one that won the title to the one that secured 100 points. And he said, I don't know what the future holds. Pretty open, pretty transparent, pretty honest. But what he did say was that, I love these fans. I love the appreciation they've shown for me. And there was a sense that he's feeling very genuine about that. There's not, footballers can often speak in platitudes, and they can speak as though they've been very heavily media trained. I felt as though in that moment, he was still on a massive high. There was no coming down yet. And then obviously the presentation afterwards was great. Every player getting their opportunity to do the 3 cheers and lift the trophy in front of the fans. Then as the sort of the trophy took a back seat and Tanaka just tuned out completely, he was sat on the back of the podium, just sort of chilling out.
Just he disengaged physically, emotionally, and spiritually from everything around him, and was just existing in his own little bubble, wasn't he? Sat on the plinth.
He had a little bit of alone time in his enclosure, probably to take it all in. Is how I'd describe it. And then you had Ampadu leading chants at the front, in front of the fans. He then decided to what's the term here actually? When he pulled down Willie Nyonto's shorts while they're all dancing. It's funny. I'd describe that as getting kegged.
Yeah, kegged or debagged.
Yeah, okay. Because I mean, it's one of those things where different parts of the country have different descriptions.
There might be a Leeds. Yeah, there might be a Leeds term for it. Be sure to let us know.
Yeah. Well, I'm not from Leeds, and I've never been kegged in Leeds, so I don't know what that term is. So I was worried yesterday actually that someone would, because I was stood in the middle of the road at the end of the hedgerow, worried that someone might come up behind me and just decide to just go whoosh. I wouldn't have been surprised if it was you, whilst you were recording with like a GoPro or something, just to put on your socials. But yeah, did that. Ampadu did that, and then Ramazani, after Willie Nyonto sort of pulled them up, Ramazani then does it because there's no show without punch. And then after that, Nyonto just decides, you know what, my shorts are around my ankles. They're singing my song. I'm gonna own it. Yeah. What's better than this? Guys being dudes, huh?
Yeah. The other two things, because we obviously need to move on because there's so much has happened that it feels like Plymouth was about a month ago. I believe at some point on Saturday, Willie Nyonto ended up on Pete Lowe's shoulders, which is an incredible mental image that I think everyone will enjoy. The other thing that I really enjoyed was the guy, I can't remember which train station it was that we pulled into on the way back on the 17-hour train journey back, and he had Feierbiest 6 on the back of his shirt, which I thought was spectacular merchandising. To already have that on the back of a shirt. And then Joshua Giavogi's signed shirt with all the lovely messages from players, which included the quite remarkable statement, best human I've ever met, which made me wonder who in the Leeds squad I haven't met this season.
I'll tell you what I really enjoyed about that was that, so a few of the players had sort of signed it with their number. I think it was Joe Piroux wrote Papa, Bruder, Leader, Machine, Ich liebe dich, which obviously means I love you in German. And then juxtaposed perfectly right beside was, I think it was Brendan Aronson's, and it was, his message was, best Mario Kart player ever, or best Mario Kart player here. Love you, Jay. And it was just like, yeah, some great emotional intelligence there, lads. But there was a lot of lovely messages on that shirt, weren't there?
And it just says that, for a player who played so few minutes, you can actually still have an impact. You can still contribute. And I'd say the same about Alex Cairns as well. You see how much he's valued by the squad and how much his presence is valued. I think we quite often equate contributions simply to minutes. And I think that kind of debases sometimes the whole role of a player in a squad and what they're there to do. So those were lovely things. And then Sunday was the awards. I went along to that just to give you a little eye opener as to what guests at the awards were given as like a gift, a promotion gift. A lovely presentation case with 4 different flavors of Red Bull in it. On brand. And,
does anyone know the cups that the Leeds players were drinking out of on the parade buses? Does anyone know what they had emblazoned on the side?
No.
What, the paper cups?
What do they have on the side of them?
Well, they had Red Bull on the side of them, didn't they?
Oh, did they? I didn't look that closely.
And the other gift, know what the car in front of the parade, what that had? An enormous Red Bull can on the back of it. Yeah.
Yeah, they've got a presence, that's for sure. And I think there was a commemorative pen as well. My presentation case for the pen was an empty one, which I wondered was maybe some sort of ironic joke on the club's behalf at a rider for the YUP. Please stop riding. Yes, I think someone had gone around and collected themselves some pens just to remember it, and fair play, because if you paid to go to the awards, then I think you probably deserve that. But my awards experience was enhanced greatly by being sat next to Jason, the son of Paul Madeley, who had some unbelievable stories about his dad and about those times, but also just his sheer delight, particularly when Paul Reaney was given his Lifetime Achievement Award and brought the house down with a speech. And I'll not say all of what Jason said in response to Madeley, but he did certainly question whether, to Reaney, he did certainly question whether or not Paul Reaney is entirely consistent with coming up with great speeches like that, suggesting that maybe he doesn't always talk quite so well. His speech was absolutely superb, just brilliant. And you worry sometimes when someone gets on the mic and they make it clear that they've got a lot to say, that they might run on a bit and they might kind of miss the moment or miss the timing. He timed it brilliantly. His message was superb. It had a little bit of what everyone wanted, like a nod to Don Revie and the backroom staff then and the amazing players he played with. His role in it all, a bit of kind of self-effacing, and then just a tribute to the players and a challenge to them to not fear anyone next season. You don't know what's possible, and bloody hell, our right back scores more goals than I could ever dream of, and he's not a bad looking lad either. And everyone absolutely loved it. It was brilliant. One of a few very wholesome moments, including Al Tanaka's recall of that night at Hull when he scored the goal. He said, "We were so bad in that first half, and the boss said to me, 'You need to score.'" That was all he needed to say. Absolutely superb. Brought the house down. Dan James dancing was good as well. You couldn't really argue too much with Player of the Year going to Daniel James. I think he'd be in our top 3 There's so many candidates. I saw somebody saying that Tanaka not being in your top three is sacrilege. I understand that because he has been absolutely superb. I think you could probably have a winner, two runners up, and then three players in third quite comfortably. There were so many that put their hand in the air this season. But for me, it was James or Rodon. And delighted to see Dan James get it because he is one of the most down-to-earth footballers I think we've ever encountered. And his Greek dancing is sensational.
It is indeed. Before we get on to sort of our memories of the parade and how that went down, and going full Ampadu, shall we say, we decided that a few people asked us whether we'd have some YEP awards for the Leeds season that we just had, because it's one to remember, and we thought, yeah, it's a great idea. So as Graham has just alluded to there, player of the season, I think, yes, goes with Dan James or Joe Rodon. I personally am going to give it to Joe Rodon because he played every single game. He played all but 4 minutes, got 5 yellow cards. He actually scored a goal for once, which I'm sure he was delighted about because he's not made a habit of that throughout his career. But Leeds finished the season with the lowest expected goals conceded, and Rodon was a mainstay in that in that defence. Just came up with the big moments when required, like Oxford away, as you mentioned, Graham, and just set the standard. If you're going to play centre half for Leeds United, you've got to wear your heart on your sleeve. You've got to put your head where it hurts, and you've got to be consistent. And Rodon was. So for that reason, he's my player of the season. Graham, you've obviously just explained why Dan James is also a worthy winner. I think a lot of people would maybe go with Tanaka because he finished the night on Sunday with player's player, which again shows the regard in which he's held by his fellow professionals who probably have a better opinion of things and a better read of things than we do. But other categories that I think they may be not as well placed to answer would be best press food, because everybody knows that we love to harp on about the press food, and the Championship might be a little bit lackluster when it comes to it. But I think I'm going to guess your answer.
Okay, go on then. Guess it.
I think you're going to say Hull City.
Hull City is very, very good. Yes, I will give you that. I'm just trying to think if anyone came close to matching
and it has to be this season as well, because last year we might have gone to some places where that was where they put on a good spread, but I'm talking about this year explicitly.
Specifically this season. It's difficult, there's not many that have leapt out and made me think, oh, this was absolutely tremendous.
Considering that we've had quite a lot of early kickoffs, we've had a lot of breakfasts.
We have Watford. I remember Watford being decent. What was Watford?
Yeah. I can't remember specifically what it was, but I feel like we definitely had some vegetables, which is a rarity, to say the least.
Yeah.
It's
you know what?
It's a lot of pies.
Get
it's a lot of breakfasts.
Yeah. Leeds get an honourable mention for was it pulled pork we had? There was a really nice pulled pork, and there was also a lamb curry that might have been at Easter that I very much enjoyed. But I think, yeah, you're probably right. Probably Hull do it right, and on the concourse as well. They get it right. So well done to them. Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm sure that the commemorative plaque will be arriving at the MKM Stadium, courtesy of the YEP, in no time at all. I'm going to go with goal of the season because I know that Tanaka got it for his whole strike, but personally, that's in my top 3. It's not my number 1.
Okay. Remind me of the opponent. Tanaka's mid-air in-step flick.
Sheffield Wednesday.
Yes, I think that might be my favourite, just because it was such an incredible piece of skill.
My goal of the season is Joe Peru against Sheffield United at Bramall Lane.
Screamer. Yeah.
That was just technique. That was incredible. And I'm giving him extra points because of the goalkeeper he was up against. Everybody knows that I love Michael Cooper. All right, get over it. I'm saying that was an absolute thriker. So that one's mine. So is your Tanaka flick the your goal of the season?
Yeah. That was my favorite. Yeah.
Right. What else could we do for categories of
Supporter of the podcast, friend of the year.
podcast friend of the year? Yes.
I do have a contender for that. It's not Larry Nance Jr. He's probably top 15 though. So plenty of room for improvement. I would say Kian, who was at the awards actually on Sunday night, and the reason why he's podcast friend of the season is that he listens to the podcast despite the express wishes of his father, who is not a friend of the podcast. And I just love that we're dividing families. You know, I nearly said something really politically contentious then. What are we like?
Let's
We're like Victor
maybe not,
Orta.
let's keep politics out of this podcast.
We're like
this
Victor
one
Orta.
end of the season.
We're splitting opinions. You know, maybe we're a bit Marmite, not too Marmite, hopefully, because we would like to monetize this to a greater degree. But yes, my pick would go to Kian for rebelling against his parents.
I don't know who this individual is because I don't think they used a username that would identify them. But we did receive a comment on one of the episodes over the course of the season, which was meant to be very complimentary, but I didn't see it that way. It was by far my second favorite Leeds United podcast. So if that was you and you are listening to your second favorite Leeds United podcast, you are or at least you're my friend of the pod of the year, because that was.
Did they mean by far as in much further away from third, or by far as in much further away from first?
Well, that's what I mean, right? Like, we don't know. So I'm glass half empty on this one. What is your favourite Leeds United song of the season?
You know, I've always had a massive soft spot for You've Seen Firpo Now Off Your Trot. I've always loved that one because it was sung initially fairly tongue-in-cheek, I think is probably the kindest way we could describe it. That's how it was sung. And then it was reclaimed. You know, it became like a badge of honor. His other song is great. The Dan James one is good. The Tanaka Tequila one is good. You answer, and I'll have a think if there's any others this season that they've sung that have made me howl with laughter.
I do think the full version of the Tanaka Tequila one, because I know that basically it's now just Ayo. I like the first time that was sung and he was sort of out on the pitch after a win. I don't know. I like what do you call it? The trumpet that's in that.
Yeah, it's probably it's brass instrument.
Brass. Yeah. Something like that. I really really like that. So that's my pick for song of the year. And again, great creativity again.
Yeah, sometimes I think, who came up with this and how did they get it to be sung? You know, how did they popularize it? Did they send all their mates like a voice note on WhatsApp and say, "We're going to sing this tonight. Help me out." Like, I'd love to know the origin story.
I think especially the Tanaka one. It's got such a build up that if you're starting that in an away end, you've got to really know that it's going to pop off. Because otherwise,
you've got to have such self-assurance and confidence, don't you?
Because people you're going to get an on your own, probably from your own fans,
from your own friends. Good. Yeah. I think probably if I had to pick one, I'd say, Tanaka.
Okay, and final award. What is the funniest moment from the Leeds press pack that you can remember from this season? Something that made you absolutely howl with laughter. I think if we'd done this last year, it would have been the first time that Popey tried to tweet a photo of the team sheet and accidentally made it into a GIF. That is still up there with one of the funniest things I've ever seen. You know, I mean, once you've done 50 years at the BBC, obviously, you know, the tech can maybe get a bit ahead of you. What's coming to mind when I sort of say the funniest press moment?
You know, I really enjoyed, not directly involved in the local press pack and some of the characters that people will know and love, but I really enjoyed when Ethan Ampadu was asked if he and Paraag had any conversations about next year, and Ethan said, "Yes, we have conversations like, hello, how are you?" That was an excellent press room moment. I don't know. You've put me on the spot. I'd need to have more of a think.
I think as well. Again, this one involves Popey. Not to say that he's a figure of fun or anything. He's a very fantastic journalist. But when Chris Wilder called Popey out,
That's
as
it.
in,
That's the one.
tongue in cheek, very tongue in cheek. What did he say again? Remind me.
It was after Leeds fans had been singing "duh duh duh," etc. He said, "Popey, I saw you singing,"
Yeah,
which I thought was class. And it's not the first
yeah.
time either that he's had a dig at Popey. He also said that he didn't want to. He talked about Firpo playing like an old-fashioned Leeds left back plays like an old-fashioned number 9. And I don't want to say
Joe
names
Jordan, I
because
think he said.
I don't want to say names because it'll kind of people make fun at my age or whatever. And then he insinuated that Popey was older than the Hills. So yes, I also enjoyed that very much.
Yeah. And all the actual really, really funny press moments that we've had over the season, we can't actually tell you on the podcast because we'd all lose our jobs. So let's stick with what you said about Ampadu there and go on to going full Ampadu on the parade because he was the star of the show, the man of the match, the man of the season. And I think it's absolutely right that he got sloshed and enjoyed the parade to the fullness that his poor pickled brain would allow, because that was a great watch, especially the supercut, which was just all the best moments of him on the bus from the LUTV stream.
Yeah, really good. I remember when Sheffield United won, I think they won back-to-back promotions, and I remember being at the Sheffield Star Football Awards to present the Chesterfield player with his award after they'd been relegated again, and a really fun night for me. And Sheffield United, like Chris Wilder and his players, I remember Basham and Billy Sharp and that, they looked like they hadn't slept for about a week or taken on board any water or food. It was simply just beer and champagne the whole way. And I remember thinking, like, they are doing it properly, like they're doing it justice. And I was concerned that this Leeds team, I don't want to use the word boring, but I was concerned that they were so focused on winning the title and then, maybe just exhausted by that, they wouldn't have time or the opportunity to properly go at it. And then at the awards on Sunday night, I thought they all looked very well behaved. They didn't look particularly merry. They looked like they were relaxing and enjoying themselves, but it certainly there was no wild scenes. And I thought, Ethan Ampadu is just a consummate professional. He's
We
all
said that
about the
last week, didn't
football.
we?
He's all about the football. And then on parade day, he let himself go slightly, a little bit, strayed
Unreal.
into areas that maybe had one or two in the staff on the buses, kind of on edge, shall we say? But he's 24, right? And in his career, let's be honest, in his career so far, he's tasted pretty much just disappointment. He's had 3 relegations. He's had a Wembley final defeat. Then he wins the title at 24 as captain of Leeds United, and he's on the top of a bus that enters the city, and there's 150,000 people plus there, and they are hanging on and repeating his every word. I think in that situation, you have license to let yourself get a bit carried away and be a bit looser. The Nando's thing was very funny. I think Willie Nando's favorite restaurant was excellent. The Junior Firpo Real Betis thing was tremendous, just absolutely superb. The fact that they spotted a guy called Noel, 21-year-old Leeds fan, wearing a Real Betis shirt, and he started to chant, "Betis, Betis, Real Betis." And live stream viewers thought this is the first transfer rumor of the season. Ampadu's just broken Firpo's confidence that he's going back home. He might well do, I'm not ruling that out. But he had simply seen the Real Betis shirt, which was being worn because the guy wearing it was dashing out the house quick and didn't have time to grow up to wash anything else. So that's why he wore it and set in motion a transfer panic. There's some great moments from Ampadu, but that photo of him looking like Sid the Sloth from Ice Age, like leaning back on the barrier of the open top bus, looking like he's about to die. I mean, I imagine everyone around him at that moment was in the midst of reaching out to grab him and secure him to the bus. That will live on. That is this season's click with a cigar photo, I would say.
Well, I'd say everyone was probably reaching out to go, okay, let's make sure Ethan doesn't fall over the side of the bus, apart from Dan James, who somehow in that still image of the live stream is the second most interesting and second funniest thing, despite the fact that he is shirtless and clearly twirling his Under Armour or his shirt above his head from the back of the bus, like, I don't know, a school kid on the last day of term. Great effort, lads, I think would be my message. I tell you what I absolutely loved as well. Junior Firpo, born in the Dominican Republic, grows up in Seville, comes through the Betis youth system, goes to play at Barcelona, is relegated with Leeds, is then promoted with Leeds. He's been at the top of the game. He's been a Premier League player. He's a full international. He's, maybe from a background which maybe doesn't have the sort of drinking culture that we do in the United Kingdom. And he took a picture of himself, Ampadu, Rodon, and I think Dan James, put it on his story and just captioned it after they'd got back to Elland Road, after the buses had left the city centre, captioned it, "Stay in town." Just like sending out an APB to literally every Leeds fan who follows him on Instagram. Just stay in town. We're coming back. I didn't think they would. They did. They ended up on, I think it's Collingwood Street, at Katie O'Brien's. That's where the videos of Patrick Bamford singing Wagon Wheel, the Rock Me Mama song, in Katie O'Brien's was. Largy Ramazani obviously is in the shot. Don't know what he's doing there. Dancing probably. You had Ampadu, Rodon, Bogle, and Firpo sort of as the four who were sending it, shall we say.
Bogle going live was probably something else that set some teeth on edge at Elland Road, because you can't control it. Like, football is so controlled in terms of what goes out to the world and what people see and hear from their players. So the idea that Jayden Bogle half cut could be broadcasting to the world on Instagram with Junior Firpo both addressing his contract situation was excellent. Really, really funny.
You know what we should do? We should maybe take this opportunity to speak directly to our bosses. Some of whom may listen to the podcast, because Junior is a very highly paid individual, very high profile individual, and he was on, a live stream on Jayden Bogle's Instagram saying, "Paraag, give me the ting, sign the ting," meaning obviously the contract for an extension, saying, "I love it here," all this sort of thing. So Graham, do you have a message for our bosses maybe about, I don't know, a new contract, or Premier League terms, or some of the players are going to get 40 to 60% wage increases? Maybe some of that could trickle down.
Like when we're out there covering parades and promotions, you're not thinking about money. No one gets into this, thinking about money. Obviously we love what we do here, and we want to continue doing it. And obviously there'll be conversations, and you would expect that the Premier League would bring certain circumstances about. So we'll leave it with them.
Yeah, thank you very much, National World, in advance.
Speaking of jobs, well, Saturday night, I get a WhatsApp saying, "Can you please be on a Zoom call tomorrow afternoon, being Sunday?" I grumpily replied, "Yes." There goes the day off ahead of the awards. And the Zoom call was with Paraag Marathi, and it was so that he could speak to the assembled local press, as he always intended to, as he said. After promotion, he was always going to do that. It was really, though, just a media opportunity orchestrated so that he could say, Daniel Farke is the manager of Leeds United next season. That was the real intent behind it. He didn't say a great deal beyond that, other than we need to nail our transfers. We want to spend every penny that we're allowed. we've already been working for 6 months on targets, that kind of thing. It was really just so that he could say and end the speculation that Farke is his manager. And his reasoning for waiting until then was that he wanted to win a title, he wanted to win a trophy, and then speak. You can buy that, or you can not. I've had some people message me saying that they thought that was a bit weak, particularly when he said he felt sorry that the coaches and Farke were left swinging in the breeze while all that speculation was going on. But the 49ers, I mean, it is kind of their thing to not speak until there's something to say. And I think maybe it's a discussion for another day rather than on the parade and promotion podcast. But you can debate until the cows come home whether or not there was a consideration at 49ers Towers as to whether or not they would keep Daniel Farke in charge. I definitely think they reviewed it and discussed it and had conversations about it. So I don't think he would have, during the 2 weeks or whatever hours of speculation, have come out and ended the speculation.
I think what you could have seen as well is in that that little press group Zoom call, Paraag could have also come out and said something along the lines of, we are committed to Daniel. We're planning on offering him a new contract, which would be a reward for getting promoted. I think it speaks to the fact that there probably was a review conducted, and then my opinion of it is that the strength of feeling towards Farke, the response that they've seen over the past few days and weeks, basically means that yes, they might control how the club is run, but ultimately the fans do have a quite considerable say in the individuals who represent their team, I think that the consensus is that most will say, Farke definitely deserves to have a run at the Premier League. But
I think you've got a point there. I'd probably also say there might have been other considerations. Like let's be totally honest, right? Football is a brutal sport and industry. So you go up, and one of the first things you do is you say, well, we need to add quality, and the current players all hear that, and nobody hides them from that. Leeds are looking to strengthen and bring in better players. That's the brutal truth of it. For all these lads that have been absolute heroes this season, some of them won't start next season at Leeds. Some of them might not even be at Leeds next season. In the same vein, it's not really any different to have a look and go, have we got the best manager that we could have right now? There isn't a lot of sentiment in football. I think you're absolutely right that they will have taken the fan view into consideration, and particularly seeing the backing that he got in the last 2 games from the fans. But I also wonder if maybe they look at what else there was and decided, well, actually, our best bet is to stick with Daniel Farke, because what else we could get might not stack up, or there might be other considerations or reasons. But there was definitely conversations. There was definitely some thinking time devoted to it. I would say that much. I don't think it was simply just a case of, yes, our manager's position is being debated and he's having to face questions on it in repeated press conferences, but we'll not say anything till they've won a trophy. Though I do think that Paraag Marathi would never have spoken on the record like that until the season was done. I think that was their plan.
Yeah. Do you fear for your job, Graham, that maybe they might want to replace you with an established Premier League journalist or an established European journalist to be chief football writer next year?
I think when I took this job, I knew that there would always be noise and there'll always be doubters, and I can't be like a flag in the wind just because there's a suggestion of there might be some rumor or something.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, the biggest threat could be closer than you think. No, I'm kidding. I've not got designs on the top job. Not yet, anyway. That just about finishes things for this week's Inside Ellen Road podcast. We will aim over the summer to continue our weekly correspondence with you. But as I'm sure you will be aware, Graham and I will be taking a little bit of time off. Not together. We're not going on holiday together. Don't get that in your heads.
You did ask if you could come, but the other kids said no, they didn't want you there. So
yeah, that's definitely what happened. But I think on behalf of the Inside Ellen Road podcast and the wider YEP team, thank you for a really, really successful season in the podcast game as well. We've thoroughly enjoyed it, and cannot wait to get back to it in the Premier League.
And thanks to everyone who has taken the time to introduce themselves on trains or outside grounds or at the parade yesterday, and give their feedback on the YEP or the podcast, or just to exchange views or say hello. It is very much appreciated by myself and by Jason Tyndall here, because because it does genuinely mean a lot. So yeah, congratulations on your promotion. I hope you've celebrated properly, and I hope that you will continue to do so for some time to come.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you very much. Bye for now.